Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parents. In today's episode, EM ends my engagement and gets me banned from a steakhouse all in one night. Entitled dad gets pissy at me for not letting him break the law. Entitled stepmom is getting her family to harass me because I won't compromise my faith. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. EM ends my engagement and gets me banned from a steakhouse all in one night. Oh my gosh, so glad I found this sub. Here we go. I can finally air my uncensored frustration about the night my engagement was single-handedly corrupted by my entitled mother-in-law. Let's call her Ellen because she always reminded me of Ellen DeGeneres, even before all this recent news broke. Okay, so my girlfriend and I were really engaged to be engaged. We'd both agreed we wanted to get married, but I hadn't done the formal proposal yet because we wanted to meet each other's families first, neither lived nearby. I always thought the old trope about meeting the in-laws being a big fiasco was a myth, both because I was younger and more naive then, and because I'm lucky to have easy parents. My girlfriend met them for a few hours. Once we were alone, just me and them, I told them my intentions, and my mom asked, "Does she have any kids already?" And my dad asked, "Does she have a good solid job?" And they both asked, "You really love her?" And that was that. I had their full support for the marriage. I thought meeting her parents would be the same. Some grilling was to be expected, but as long as I was honest and respectful, it would all be fine. Relevant fact, they had my girlfriend when they were teenagers by surprise, so now had a do-over daughter, their words, not mine, who was just 6 years old. My girlfriend and I made the trip up to their city and I met them for the first time over dinner at a steakhouse. It was pretty upscale, and we'd scheduled the dinner for 8 p.m., so I was surprised to see they'd brought the kid along with them. I met everyone at once and the initial awkwardness settled once we'd sat down. We were making great small talk when the 6-year-old said she was thirsty. No big deal, right? Well, all of a sudden Ellen starts screaming, "Water? Water! Water?" A waiter came rushing over to see what the commotion was and, without even making eye contact with the poor guy, Ellen went, "We've been here forever and no one's even gotten us any water. My daughter's been asking." We had been sitting for about 15 or 20 minutes without service, but they were visibly behind, and there were no circumstances that would have warranted that shouting. I should have realized from how unfazed everyone else at the table was that I should be bracing myself for a long night, but I couldn't imagine what was to come at that point. The waiter rushed over with water and apologized for the delay, explaining a few very large parties had arrived all at once. The guy seemed sincere and quite affable, so I thought the water would just be an anomaly in an otherwise pleasant night. Then Ellen kicked into full gear. "We'll need a kids menu," she informed the waiter. He said that they didn't have a kids menu, but that the chef could simplify most dishes. "What do you mean you don't have a kids menu?" Ellen replied in total disbelief, as though he'd said they didn't have a fire exit. He explained they didn't get too many child visitors and that there were enough plain foods on the menu that no separate menu had ever been necessary. Ellen sighed dramatically and waved him away. Literally, without saying a word, waved him off from the table. I tried to give him an apologetic glance, but, understandably, he didn't look back our way. I was so glad the poor guy left and didn't have to be subjected to her anymore. Meanwhile, she turned her attention on me, and I almost wished he'd come back. At least he was getting paid to be here. She was like, "So you're a screenwriter?" And I explained, "Well, yes and no. I want to be, but it's hard to get a job in that field that you can support yourself on, so I'm working at a non-profit right now. There's a screenwriting component to the job though, so I'm really happy there." Ellen turned to her 6-year-old and went, "Hear that, hun? You want to be sure to snag a man who works for profit. Learn from this. It's not too late for you." I couldn't tell if she was trying to be funny or not. So, I just let it pass, looking over to my girlfriend to see if she was even considering speaking up on my behalf. Nope. The waiter came back, visibly nervous. That hurt, because he was so relaxed and personable at the start of the meal. He asked if we'd like to hear the specials before we ordered, and Ellen said sure. Here's how that went. Waiter, first we have a lightly seared strip steak. Ellen, next. Waiter, okay. Then we have a broiled leg of grass-fed. Ellen, next. Waiter, we have a pasta primavera mixed with. Ellen, next to. And on until he'd gone through all 7 or 10 specials, even though she ultimately ordered off the menu, a plain ribeye, well done. She tried to order her daughter the same, but the kid said she just wanted plain mashed potatoes, so Ellen let her get mashed potatoes alone for dinner. Then, she sent the waiter away. The rest of us hadn't even ordered yet. And everyone else just sat there like it was entirely normal. I waited for someone to say something, thinking it was more her older daughter, my girlfriend's, place or her husband's, but when no one did I couldn't help myself. Was the one steak and potatoes going to be for all of us, or? My girlfriend explained, in the tone you'd use for a tourist violating a sacred local taboo, my mom always has the waiter put the kids' food in first, so it can get started right away. We'll order once the kitchen has hers. I thought she was joking, since Ellen didn't just order her kids' food, she also ordered her own dinner too. So I laughed. Something funny? Ellen asked. Then I realized she was serious, and I shut up. Thankfully her dad at least recognized that what was normal for them might not be as regular to me and tried to lighten the mood with a change of topic. But not even 10 minutes after we'd ordered, I guess technically 5 minutes after we'd ordered, 10 minutes after she and her daughter had ordered, Ellen started in again. Another table, that had been there long before we were, got a side order of mashed potatoes with their meal. Ellen threw a total conniption. She was sputtering so inaudibly that none of us could figure out what was wrong at first. Finally she managed to flag down some busboy who barely spoke English and began laying into him like he'd just swiped her on the freeway. He kept trying to explain he wasn't a server and he could go get one, but she wouldn't stop to breath long enough for him to find someone who could actually help. All the while I kept looking at my girlfriend for signs of embarrassment, or at the very least irritation, but you wouldn't have known if she was even hearing any of this. Our waiter came over, somehow still feigning a smile despite knowing what he was walking into, and Ellen actually goes, "Why did that table get mashed potatoes and ours haven't come yet?" The waiter kindly but concisely explained, "Well ma'am, those people ordered potatoes before your party had placed their order." Ellen looks this man dead in the eye, finally, and says, "Well, it doesn't matter when they ordered it. My daughter is the youngest one here. Her food should come out first." You could tell the waiter was working hard to restrain himself at this point. He explained it was a first come, first served policy and age didn't help one way or the other. He offered to go check on the potatoes. Ellen agreed, or more specifically she said, "Yeah, you better," but I was clocking him and he went right back to his server station, because we had only just ordered a few minutes ago. 3 or 5 more minutes passed, during which we could have no other discussion at the table except how awful this restaurant was, how hungry the poor baby was, who hadn't said a word about being hungry this whole time and was contentedly playing her loud iPad game, without headphones, disturbing all the other diners around us, and how America has lost all respect for motherhood because it's just a me culture now. I chimed in, "I'm with you on that last part." And to my utter shock, instead of laughing at my joke, my girlfriend seemed annoyed with me. So after a few minutes the waiter comes back and says the potatoes will be out very soon. Ellen then goes and does something that, again, I thought was just a myth. She took 3 singles and a 5 out of her wallet and put them on the table in full view of the waiter. Then she took 1 single away and said, "Every table I see getting potatoes before us is a bill gone." I was absolutely mortified. The waiter, to his unending credit, just took a deep breath and said, "I don't have control over the order in which the kitchen fires tickets, but what I can tell you is it should be out any minute." And left without saying anything disparaging. I had been holding my tongue all night as well, in the name of my relationship, But once the tip hit the table, the $8 tip for a $100 plus bill, on top of all else, I figured if my girlfriend was half the woman I thought she was, then she wouldn't mind my speaking up at this point. If anything, she'd be supportive, right? So I scooted my chair back a bit and said, "Listen, I know what you're doing with the cash on the table, but that kind of thing makes me really uncomfortable, and it's just not called for. Please put the money away, or we can just continue this some other time." My girlfriend's dad spits back, "What? How cheap do you have to be to not believe in tipping service workers?" Before I could process whether he was serious or yanking my chain, Ellen shocked me with, "No, you know what, you're right, this isn't necessary." I should have known better than to be relieved. She folded the bills back into her wallet, patiently waited for the next plate of mashed potatoes to be carried out, and when it wasn't delivered to us, it was a very common side dish at this place, a steakhouse. She went right up to a stranger's table and picked it up off their table. She half explained something about her daughter starving to death as she was walking away with the stranger's food, but unsurprisingly, that wasn't convincing enough for them. The old lady she took it from followed her right over to our table and tried to take it back. I was already searching for my coat tag in preparation to go, but a shoving match was beginning to unfold between Ellen and an elderly woman with a tennis ball walker, and far be it from me to sit through all that had happened only to leave just as the night was getting interesting. The elderly woman was like, "Give me back my potatoes. Who are you?" And the poor little girl was like, "Mommy, it's okay, don't take someone else's potatoes." But it all fell on deaf ears. Ellen yelled at the old lady, "How could you sit there and eat these when my daughter hasn't even been served yet? She's sitting here hungry, just a little girl, and you're over there stuffing your face? Come on, other potatoes will be out any minute." And the old lady, got to love her, was like, "Great, if they'll be out any minute, then what's the problem?" To which Ellen still found holier than thou ground, gasping, "Language, please." Finally the waiter, and this time someone higher up as well, I think the manager, thank God, came over to separate them, as they had begun to raise their voices and cause a disturbance. Staff had already asked Ellen to turn down her daughter's iPad multiple times without heed, and I'm guessing the waiter informed management about the tip on the table, stunt she pulled, because this was their final straw. They told us we were going to have to leave the restaurant. "But we don't even have our food yet," Ellen complained at the guy. This was clearly not the manager's first rodeo. "You can take the food that's already been served free of charge, everything else will be cancelled. Please leave immediately." The old lady didn't miss her chance to knock the potatoes right onto the floor, so we couldn't try to take them with us. Nothing else had been served yet, so we had to leave without any food. When my girlfriend and I were finally alone in our car, she said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, "Not at all. And I really can't believe you didn't warn me." And she went, "How could I have known about any of that?" And, confused, I asked, "Is she not usually like that?" Even more confused than me, my girlfriend asked, "Who?" "Your mom." "What's my mom got to do with the terrible service at that place?" That was the beginning of the end of our relationship. The fact that she didn't see anything wrong with her mom's behavior, and that I'd be marrying into that situation, shook me too deep. We both dodged a bullet in more ways than one. In hindsight, we weren't right for each other, regardless of who her family was. Her mom saved us both a lot of time and heartache, helping me realize in one night what would have probably taken us years otherwise. Within a month we'd moved into separate apartments and gone on a break that ended up lasting forever. I'm not sorry I won't see you again, Ellen. I am sorry any waitstaff ever will, though. Dodged a bullet, is to say the least. Imagine having kids, or a divorce. I'd never seen this side of her personality, and we'd been great friends even before we'd gotten romantically involved, so I really want to believe this was not her dominant side and just some dark crevice that lurked within her. We weren't right for each other for a lot of other, less extreme reasons, too. But whichever it was, you're 100% right. 1000% right. Every time this story crosses my mind, I'm steeped in relief I didn't have kids with her, huh? I literally gasped when she asked what her mother had to do with the service. I cannot believe you sat there for so long during that, I'm glad you got out. And the poor little girl was like, Mommy, it's okay, don't take someone else's potatoes. So there's a chance that the entitled gene didn't pass on to this one. Faith in humanity slightly restored. Yeah, I mean, her other daughter was also mostly normal and kind for the entire time I knew her. So whatever this gene was laid dormant until triggered. Maybe by having kids? Thankfully, I never found out. Wow. So, Fu on so many levels. Glad you got away. Wow. Entitled dad gets pissy at me for not letting him break the law. I sell archery gear, and bow hunting is highly regulated here. Only pest species are allowed to be hunted, nothing native. This guy calls up, and the following conversation occurs. See, hi, I just moved here and I want to buy about a hunt snakes. Me, okay, I should probably tell you that. See, that it's illegal, I know. But I still want to do it. He knows it's illegal but still asked? Red flag alert. Me, I can't sell you equipment if I know you're going to use it to break the law. See, fine whatever, I'm not going to hunt snakes with it. Me, but you already said you are. At this point the customer knows he already messed up by telling me his intentions. See, well, how can I move forward with this? Me, my recommendation is to contact your local pest control services for snake removal if you're having a snake problem. See, no, I mean how can I move forward with buying a bow from you? Me, I'm not selling you anything that I know will be used to break the law. See, I know they're a protected species, but I have to protect my kids, I have the right to protect them from dangerous wildlife. Me, they're a protected species for a reason, you don't have the right to kill them just because they're dangerous, and I cannot condone the behavior you're advocating for. There are legal ways to deal with this problem. See, oh, Mr. High and Mighty over here. You sell equipment knowing that it'll be used to kill innocent Bambis, but a dangerous snake is crossing the line, you're a fucking hypocrite. Me, hunting deer is legal because they are a pest species that destroys native flora and fauna and they need to be culled as they have no natural predators here. Snakes live here natively and are an important part of the ecosystem. In this circumstance, you're the deer. A dangerous pest species that is a threat to the native wildlife. See, my kids come first and thank the government for protecting snakes. None of you can tell me what to do and no law is going to stop me from. Me, goodbye. At that point I hung up. I understand the desire to protect your kids, but his entitled attitude and complete disregard for the law is unsettling. I'ma guess. Australia? Like every time a random species seems to be a pest seems to be Australia. Yes. Deer aren't native here, they were brought here for the specific purpose of hunting them, but the populations have grown and are now a big problem. I suspect snakes being a lesser crime than what he actually wants to use it for. I've lived for 30 years in Australia, been an archer for many years and never found a need to shoot at a snake. I don't bow hunt. But, using a hunting arrow on a snake seems weird, right? I mean, you technically can, but it seems like an odd way to kill a snake. This reminds me of a guy I knew who wanted to file charges against my former employer and report him to anyone he could for not doing what the guy wanted. My boss was a workers' compensation attorney, and this guy demanded my boss help him commit workers' comp fraud. Obviously, my boss said no. The guy lost his ever-loving mind. You hung in there longer than I would have. I'd have hung up much sooner. Entitled stepmom is getting her family to harass me because I won't compromise my faith. So some background context is required to fully understand my situation. I, 23M, am the younger of my brother, 26M, and my mom was old school Catholic and my dad was an atheist. Me and my brother were raised Catholic, my dad never minded. When I was about 11, my parents got a divorce and my dad got custody. My mom changed after the divorce. Me and my brother are no contact with her. A little while after me and my brother started being outspoken atheists to stick it to mom. In all reality, my brother was just coming into his own and the church just didn't have a place in his life, and I was the kid brother who followed his big bro. My dad almost instantly remarried to a woman I affectionately called the witch as a kid because I didn't know how my dad loved her without her putting a spell on him. She was rude, elitist, gold-digging, a total Karen. My dad changed too because of her. He still loved us and he tried his best with us. I will defend to the last that he was a good father. His only flaw is his taste in women. But he never really was the same and always curtailed to his wife. As a kid, I was plagued by night terrors. I barely slept most of middle school. Of course, my stepmother's suggestion was medication and therapy. Nothing against it, but it wasn't what I needed. I know now I have trauma relating to my mother's abuse and her encouraging my brother to commit suicide. One day I was searching through some old boxes and found my communion cross gifted to me. Because of the nostalgia of a time I had an actual family, I hung it on my wall. Slept like a baby the first time in years. That was sophomore year of high school. I realized that I just felt safe around Catholic symbols. It's not like anything else in that time of my life was comforting me, so I started escaping my home in the local church. The congregation accepted me and I even started apprenticing with a blacksmith who went to the crutch. Around the start of junior year, I was a born-again Catholic. Wore a cross I forged myself every day. On the face, my father and stepmother were supportive. And if Karen wasn't around, my dad genuinely supported me. Drove me to church and such. But my stepmother would ask that I not wear a cross out when there's guests over. Also, one of her favorite things to do was give house tours to lord over them how much her husband makes and how nice her house was. After I decorated my room with various religious items, she stopped showing off my room, which I didn't mind. She also screamed at me if I ever dared to leave my Bible anywhere outside my room. She would also make snide comments constantly. This is already too long of context, so we'll paraphrase. At 18 I enlisted and served 5 years in the Marines. I got back home. I'm crashing in my old room until me and my brother can rent an apartment together and I start college. My stepmom introduced me to a daughter of her friends. She was pretty and nice when I met her, and I could tell the two mothers were trying to get us together, so I decided to go with it. We went on 2 dates, and while we didn't really connect, but I was having a fun time playing civilian, so I decided to keep going. The friction started in the planning of the 3rd date over text. The only day she had available was Sunday. I told her I was volunteering Sunday afternoon. She asked what about the morning, have a breakfast date. I said I had crutch. She said I didn't know you were religious. I just replied yeah I am, and I offered she could come along to volunteer with me. I'm helping the church with a small fair, local artists selling work to raise money for the church. She was an artist, so I thought she would like it. She just declined and stopped texting me. That was 2 days ago. Yesterday I came back from a run to my stepmom and the girl's mom having brunch. I grabbed some water and had a cordial conversation. The topic of the 3rd came up and they asked why I wouldn't go. Confused, I said I would go, I just had plans Sunday and we needed to find a new date, and explained what I was doing. My stepmom said in a half-annoyed voice, "Oh, you're still on that?" I learned from an early age that I can't even engage with her, so I just said yeah I am and walked away to beat my frustrations out on a knife I was working on. Well, apparently the mere mention I was still in my religious phase gave the girl the ick. Well, last night she knocked on my door and asked to talk. But she barged in before I could say no. Then she started talking at me about how a girl like that comes once in a life and I shouldn't be vindictive just because she doesn't share my delusions. That confused out of me because I was the one who was ghosted and I never did anything to be vindictive. So I asked what she meant, and she went on one of her "my voice is calm so I'm right" rants about how I should have cancelled my plans to take her out that Sunday, and just because my church says men can treat women however they want doesn't mean I can. At that point I just left the room. She's impossible to fight with, and if she gets angry then all hell breaks loose. I learned that on Christmas Eve when I was kicked out and left in the cold when I was 14. After that, haven't heard the end of it from stepmom. I just lost a good girl over a myth, or women don't like stuck-up men. And as per usual, my dad is staying out of it. As for the girl I was set up with, I don't really care. I mean, it's her choice, and honestly, I'm trying to ask out a childhood friend anyway. I think I was just being nice taking her out. I also don't care. My family is atheist. They have every right to believe what they want. Hell, I served 5 years to protect that right. And I personally believe the worst sin one can commit is to deny someone their convictions. But it's getting hard not saying something back. The rest of my family is either backing her or not getting into it. My step-aunts are sending me atheist articles and other gotcha pieces about how Sky Daddy doesn't exist. I'm literally the only member of my family I have a relationship with that's not outspokenly atheist. I'm already a black sheep for enlisting instead of going to a Ivy League college and not selling my soul to politics or business. I've asked them to stop, but my wishes aren't being respected because the need to unbrainwash me. It's getting annoying. I don't want to go low to no contact because I love my dad and they're apparently a package deal. My brother, being the only rational person, is backing me. He thinks the whole thing's stupid and is putting in more time looking for apartments for us so we can just leave the house. I'm not hopeful they'll come around and accept me. But I'm not compromising my faith because my step-family wants to be snooty. Update: thanks y'all for the advice. Just to respond to the general answers I'm getting. I'm not going to be petty and try to show her up, act holier than thou to piss her off or generally cause a problem. I'm going to turn the other cheek and live my life. For those saying I have blinders for my dad, that's probably true, but I'm not going to abandon the man raised me, taught me everything it means to be a man just because of his wife. My religion has nothing to do with my mother. I chose Catholicism out of my own free will, not because my abusive mother controlled me. A lot of you guys have bad experiences with the faith. I get that. I don't want to discount it, but it's what held me together during my worst moments, and it's been warped by people to their own ends, and that greedy, vindictive side is what most people see. Your stepmom is clearly nuts. You clearly are not. If a girl is going to ghost you over being religious, it was never going anywhere in the first place. All the best with your apartment search. It's good to know your brother has your back. I was raised Catholic and was devout for many years as an adult. By the time I was in my 30s, I was 100% atheist and divorced. I would never date anyone religious at this point in my life. That being said, when my daughter was 17, she wanted to attend our local Catholic church and the RCIA classes. She didn't drive, so I took her every Sunday to Mass and stayed in the parking lot reading. I took her every Wednesday evening to her classes and did the same wait and read routine. When she had her confirmation, I drove her to the cathedral and threw down some real dollar to get her the traditional gold crucifix and rosary. My daughter is 30 now and still Catholic, and I'm still atheist, and we still love one another with all our hearts. Her brother is still atheist and still her best friend. Your family is nuts. I raised my kids to think for themselves even when it's something different than my beliefs. For what it's worth, this old woman is proud of you for thinking for yourself, and I'm sorry your SM is so self-righteous. Your step-family are a family of asses. I would just ignore them all, and hopefully you can move out ASAP. Hope you can ask out your childhood friend soon. Do you live in a highly religious community or something? And did your stepfamily get a lot of grief for being atheist? I can't imagine any other reason for such hostility against your beliefs. I am atheist myself, living in mostly atheist country, and while my personal belief about religion has been whatever, I never outright told anyone that they are stupid for believing. Live and let live. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.